Hello and welcome back to the House of FIFA YouTube channel. It is Harry here, and today I thought I would do something a little bit different from normal, where instead of looking at things from a historical perspective, I thought I'd look at certain events from a more personal perspective, try and switch things up a little bit. I've been reading a phenomenal book by David Conn entitled The Fall of the House of FIFA recently, and at the start of the book, in the introduction, before the vitriol begins, he writes the following, quote, "All of the people who love football, the uncountable, ever-expanding millions or billions of us, will forever remember their first World Cup. For children watching on television, the faraway stars and splendours of the rolling matches, it is greater than entertainment and remembered with more than fond nostalgia. It is a formative experience." Close quote. He then goes on to describe his own first World Cup, which was the 1974 edition held in West Germany, and how he saw it through a 9-year-old's eyes, who was taken aback by the elegance of Johan Cruyff and Franz Beckenbauer. I resonated with this statement greatly, because it's true. Every single football fan really does have a first World Cup story to tell, be it the very first in 1930, the very latest edition in Russia in 2018, or any other one in between. I decided to take inspiration from this and make a video on my first ever World Cup and how I saw it at the time, as well as a summary of the World Cup in general for that tournament. Of course, my first World Cup was not 1974, unlike Conn's, as it took place 25 years before my beginnings as a living, breathing human being on this planet. But instead, it was the 2006 tournament, which was like Conn's in some respects, as it was held in Germany, albeit a unified one by this point. Considering my earliest memory is climbing the Eiffel Tower with my parents in August 2002, the 2002 World Cup in Japan and South Korea is just out of my memory reach. But the 2006 edition very much had me captivated. I know it's a bit more of a personal than a serious video, but I thought it'd be quite fun to do anyway. So without any further ado, let's launch into the story of my first ever World Cup, the 2006 tournament in Germany. 2006 was an amazing time. I mean, we could actually go to school without the threat of a pandemic hanging over us, and the biggest things we had to worry about were the war in Iraq and climate change. Boy, do I miss those days. In all seriousness though, 2006 is probably my favourite year of my life so far, certainly up until August in any case. Not only was I starting to find my feet at school, both socially and academically, but my family went on an amazing cross-France holiday of endless sunshine and memories, and of course, Crazy by Gnarls Barkley was in the charts. What a phenomenal song that is. Most importantly though, and more pertinently for the purposes of this video, my love for football was starting to blossom spectacularly. Although I had started supporting Man City the year before,
see, I'm not a glory hunter.
I now started to subliminally immerse myself in the commercialization of football, receiving things such as Man City branded curtains, calendars, a clock, a football, as well as a kit with Badger 25 emblazoned on the back. I'd started to play the game a lot more too, as my school accommodated a couple of football teams for my year group. Yes, I was in the B team. And I remember scoring a goal during a school tournament and subsequently running down the side of the pitch in celebration with my arms outstretched like a plane and lapping up the applause from the spectators on the side. Then, all of a sudden, World Cup fever hit.
And it hit hard.
I think I was aware that a major tournament was about to take place, but not quite to the magnitude of a spectacle which billions around the world regularly tune in for. As a child, you don't really care about the behind-the-scenes deceit which takes place within the organisation that is meant to host, or at least set up, this showpiece event. The fact that FIFA at this time were widely perceived to be a corrupt and morally bankrupt organisation, or that votes may well have been bought by the Germans in order to host the tournament, albeit those allegations came to light a lot later, never really would have crossed my mind. All I could see was a month-long festival of football right in front of my very eyes, with stadiums packed to the rafters with baying fans and 32 teams coming together to try to compete for football's ultimate prize, and such a thought was unlike any that I'd ever experienced up to that point. Even now, whenever there is a major international tournament taking place, I care about games like Russia vs Saudi Arabia, or, in the case of the 2006 World Cup, Angola vs Iran, much more than I should. But you put them in the context of there being a global prize at stake, and you best believe I'm tuning in. Television was, obviously, not as high quality as it is now, with HD TV only just starting to creep into existence. Indeed, ITV pioneered their first HD TV coverage, the first Freeview channel to do so, during this World Cup, as they put an ITV HD channel onto the Telewest digital cable platform, as well as generally in the territorial region of London, before it ceased to exist after the tournament's conclusion. My family didn't have an HD TV in those days, neither did we live in London, probably for the best. So we made do with the quality at our disposal, which, to me at the time, seemed groundbreaking. Of course, football was transmitted to our screens from all over the continent on a regular basis, but since I only knew about the foreign leagues by virtue of reading about them briefly in Match magazine, especially since the Premier League was the primary focus, this was a whole new world. I suppose, when you are of that age, you see stuff like this through rose-tinted glasses, but the allure and sparkle of a major tournament adds another shade of rose to your perception of proceedings. And so regardless of what any World Cup after the 2006 tournament either will do or has done to me, it can never top the sheer excitement of 2006 as a 7-year-old lad making his way into the clutches of the beautiful game, which, to be honest with you, I'll probably never escape from. Admittedly, looking back with the viewpoint of a 21-year-old who has seen 4 World Cups to date, including the 2006 World Cup, I would rank this third in terms of the quality of performances on display, as well as for the shock factor and spectacle that the tournament provided. Even with me ranking it in third out of the 4 World Cups that I've seen, ahead of the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, but behind the 2014 World Cup in Brazil and the 2018 World Cup in Russia, that doesn't mean to say that the tournament was dull or devoid of any standout moments, because of course, that just isn't the case. Perhaps the most iconic moment in World Cup history occurred during the 2006 final in Berlin, as Marco Materazzi insulted Zinedine Zidane's sister or mother, depending on which sources you believe, and as a response to this, Zidane promptly turned around and proceeded to headbutt Materazzi in the chest. The referee had no choice but to send Zidane walking from the pitch. Little did I know it at the time, but not only was Zidane one of the greatest players of the 1990s and 2000s, and a magician on the ball who had lit up the 2006 World Cup. Indeed, he would win the Golden Ball for his efforts, not least for an incredible display in the second round against Spain and the quarter-final against Brazil, and a Panenka penalty over Gianluigi Buffon in that very final, but it was also his last ever game in professional football. The footage of him walking past the World Cup trophy is incredible and almost tear-jerking in hindsight, as you see him leaving the pitch in disgrace, never to return for club or country on a professional stage, knowing full well that he could have cost his team, the one that he dragged kicking and screaming to the final, the chance to win their second World Cup in 3 tournaments. I don't recall the moment from a personal standpoint when Zidane hit Materazzi in the chest, but when that penalty shootout occurred, I was fully engaged in it, hiding behind the sofa out of sheer excitement and bouncing around whenever one was scored. Another noteworthy event was Esteban Cambiasso rounding off an incredible team move for Argentina against Serbia and Montenegro, which involved 24 passes in all and almost every single member of the team. If you haven't seen it yet, there's probably a clip of it on YouTube somewhere, and it's just an incredible demonstration of patience being a virtue as they keep the ball so well before suddenly springing into life and tearing the Serbia and Montenegro defence to shreds. You had Switzerland becoming the first and to date only team to be eliminated from a World Cup finals without conceding a goal, as they lost to Ukraine, the surprise package of the tournament, on penalties in the round of 16. You had Cristiano Ronaldo's inexplicable wink to the Portuguese bench in light of him demanding that the referee send off his Manchester United teammate Wayne Rooney after he stamped on Ricardo Carvalho. You had the fight between the Argentina and Germany teams after Germany knocked out La Albiceleste on penalties in the quarter-finals. What a bust up that was. You had the Battle of Nuremberg between the Netherlands and Portugal, I promise you it's actually called that on Wikipedia, which saw a record 16 players booked and 4 red cards brandished, with the game ending 9-aside. You had English referee Graham Poll booking Josip Simonic of Croatia 3 times before sending him off in a match against Australia. You had the emergence onto the world stage of players like Tomas Rosicky, who would sign for Arsenal, Lukas Podolski, who would win the Young Player of the Tournament award, and Ronaldo himself. And, of course, you had England losing on penalties.
Again.
Those are just some off the top of my head, and I haven't even mentioned Maxi Rodriguez's thunderbolt against Mexico, or Joe Cole's against Sweden, or the Dutch fans turning up to their game against the Ivory Coast in the group stages, in their underpants, in light of FIFA sponsorship rules banning Bavaria, a Dutch beer company, from being displayed by any Dutch fans on their attire. Now that a general summary of the World Cup is done and out of the way with, let's move into my own personal side to things. And, as you would expect, my personal memories are plentiful. I remember watching a snippet of the opening game of Germany versus Costa Rica whilst in a children's play area for my friend's birthday party, and being entranced by these players who I'd never heard of running around on the pitch, kicking the ball between each other to try to put it into this arbitrary net. For England's first game against Paraguay, I celebrated the Three Lions' goal a bit too much and was told to calm down by my mum, as we were watching it with a load of people who were around me and my brother's ages. As you might have expected, it was the talk of my school too, and we organised a raffle amongst my year group, and I received Portugal. This proved a bit awkward when England were knocked out by my raffled team in the quarterfinals, and I even had the temerity to celebrate Portugal's win over my own national team, just at the moment that my dad got angry at the fact that England inevitably had lost on penalties. However, something grabbed my attention just as much as the games themselves: the sticker book. Yes, I had caught the Panini sticker bug, and I always sought the stickers to fill out my collection. Come on, you've all done it. It's a staple of any major tournaments.
Don't lie to me now.
My parents, obviously, were spending a lot of money on them, and in reality, they're kind of a bit needless. But I'm sure they didn't mind, because I was loving the fact that my sticker collection of yet more alien players kept on growing and growing, and so long as I was happy, so were they. It even reached a stage where, whilst I was on the holiday I mentioned earlier in France, bear in mind this took place after the tournament had concluded, we walked around the beautiful town of Asper, and my mind would be fixated on the next opportunity to buy some more stickers for the sticker book. Furthermore, when the breadman came over to the house that we were staying in, he would always bring with him plenty of sticker packets, which I was only too eager to buy. Unfortunately, I would never complete this particular set, although I did complete the Match Attacks collection for the following 2006-2007 Premier League season, but my mum decided, believing it not to be valuable, to get rid of it. I still haven't forgiven her since. Mind you, it was the joy of opening the packets and seeing who you would get, building up an army of swaps to trade with others, and the satisfying feeling of putting in a sticker at the absolutely perfect angle, which, considering my very poor hand-eye coordination, didn't really happen very often, which made it unique and special to me. I rekindled this love for the 2018 World Cup, although I spent my own money this time, regularly enjoying pack openings with my work colleague in France and seeing who I would get. Undoubtedly, World Cup fever is contagious. All in all, at my age at the time, this seemed like the best thing in the world. Nothing at all could top it, and I never wanted it to end because it was a month-long spectacle of the sport which I was starting to slowly fall in love with. Or actually, quickly fall in love with, really. It was similar to the 2005 Ashes series, which proved to be the catalyst in my interest in cricket. And even though England didn't do amazingly in the 2006 World Cup, that didn't alter my perspective one jot. Although I wouldn't say that it was the only reason for it, the 2006 World Cup undoubtedly contributed to one of the happiest and greatest times of my entire lifetime. I also played the official tournament for the game on the Game Boy, although admittedly, all I did was put the worst teams that were in the Confederation into my qualifying group and see how badly I would batter them. So much for entertainment value, I guess. That just about concludes today's video on my own personal outlook on the 2006 World Cup, as well as a summary of the 2006 World Cup as a whole. If you want me to do more of these kind of personal videos, let me know by hitting the like button and of course subscribe while you are at it, and I'd be more than happy to discuss a few other personal things, like maybe for example 93-20 with Aguero against QPR, or a couple of other situations. But of course, let me know by dropping a comment or leaving a like or whatever you want to do. But in any case, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I will see you then.